Okay, we're starting. Okay, maybe I'll say a quick. Hi, my name is Mark Marino. I teach writing at the University of Southern California, and today Jessica Piazza and I are going to talk about AI research tools, and we're glad you could all watch this and join us. And let me turn things over to Jessica.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jess Piazza, writing program also, where we, perhaps like many of you are, well, many of us are terrified about AI and everything that has to do with it in terms of our students. Also really excited about it though, which I hope we are also going to convey to you reasons to potentially be excited about it as well as terrified, just like the state of all things. Um, so Mark will get into some of the ways that we already kind of use AI without realizing it. But for now, I think, and we think one of the best ways to start is just to take a second to consider and discuss a little bit a time in our own education where we did some academic research, and considering where all of us are coming from, I would say we have we're all pretty familiar with doing academic research instead of just teaching it. And I think if we take a moment to consider a time that we really enjoyed that process and it was really successful for us, we can find ways to translate those successes and some of the joy of doing that research into paths that use these AI tools in ways that engender that kind of joy and that kind of success. And so if you don't mind taking a second or sharing for a second, a time where you were researching something enjoyably and successfully, like what were you researching? What did you discover? Also, was there luck? Was there serendipity involved, which are important things too, but also whether there were people involved in your discovery, anything from a reference librarian to an expert in the field that you were speaking to firsthand. Um, was there technology involved in that when you were researching? We all come from different sort of time periods of our graduate education, so I think these answers will vary. But even books like readers' guides to periodical literature or reference books that served almost, whether they were print or online access, served as sort of a technology via which we might find what we are looking for. So you can go in the chat and maybe share some of that, because I think, again, it's a useful jumping off point for us to understand how to translate that into sort of newer methodologies. Just as a joke, and this was kind of Mark's idea, which I thought was adorable. You can also name your memory like a movie. His suggestions were Raiders of the Lost Article or The Sage of the Stacks or something. You don't have to do that if you don't feel like being extra clever on a Friday afternoon. But if you do, amazing. I would love for us to just get a little bit of a sense of where research took you when you were doing that kind of student research. Um, Whether undergrad or graduate, I think, because I think research is research, and in many ways we can translate some of these things. So we have Amber very relatably not remembering much about her undergraduate research. Definitely relatable to me. There wasn't really Wikipedia. I mean, for me, there was the internet, and the internet was like definitely readily available, but it wasn't as well indexed, I would say, and certainly as gigantic as it is now for me. Card catalogs, yep. But again, I'm also hoping about a time, like times when you felt like you were being successful with it, or it was a joyful and useful process, and why, like what technologies, what people, what processes helped that for you. Um, the serendipity of getting a book collection or journal collection because of one article and finding several others, right? That is its own sort of version of serendipity. Also akin, for me, my favorite thing was getting an article that was amazing and then going through the sources and being like, oh my God, this is like at least 30% of what I needed in terms of research. Um, the library, the PQ2573 section of the library, and look through every single book title, fun randomness. Honestly, the randomness is a part of the fun, I thought, like, and a little bit of that is gone now for a lot of our students. And the loss is not just the fun of the randomness, but also the loss is this continuation of confirmation bias when they're just coming up with a research question and looking for very specific sources that absolutely confirm what they are already thinking instead of that journey to figure out maybe what I'm thinking isn't complete. Dissertation, oh, the 42nd Street, New York Public Library. I'm a New Yorker. I'm going to be relatable again about that. Card catalogs, book ordering, transcription seminar in Paris. That's lovely. Old journals. Ooh, Lear, I hope that's how you pronounce your name. But I really want to know that former homosexual. Well, I imagine a former judge. I don't know if he's a former homosexual judge. I don't know. I don't know his life. But on the French-German border, wow, these are really fascinating stories. Um, Talking to people, talking to librarians. I mean, librarians are amazing. I don't know if you still direct your students to talk to the librarians in their subject matter personally, or to use Ask a Librarian in the chat, which is the opposite in some ways of an AI research tool, but is a tool that we have at our disposal and our students have at their disposal, and they pay a lot of money for. Librarians are wizards. I love it. Someone did the name. Uh, Gifts to look at. Oh, that's a good one. These are all really good ones. Pulling down a book next to the one I was searching for. Absolutely. Um, when I was doing my, sorry, I'm just reading. I know you're all reading too, but these are exciting to me. Ooh, some people are getting to do like world travel with their research. I did that too. I went to the British War Museum to research uh, to American and Europeans interned in Japanese occupied China during World War II, which seeing the artifacts, right? Getting to see the artifacts by hand is such an amazing thing as well. Um, Conference presentation, and the way to answer it was to check what 3 words showed up across the corporate. Oh, so good, Patty. All of these are great. Um, I think, again, the importance of doing this for me, first of all, is to remember why we want to do this in the first place, why we're excited um, to share research methodologies that are new. Now, our students won't be doing some of this stuff. Our students won't be using card catalogs, but we want to find ways to give them some of these same serendipitous moments, to give them some randomness even, which they're rallying against very, very hard. You know, they don't want randomness. They want answers. They want a checklist of answers and exactly what they're going to do. But we all understand as researchers or former researchers or whatever, that that is not how you always get the best information. And but the beauty of it is that some of oh, Blockbuster, yeah. The beauty of it is that some of these tools really do allow for some of this still. And in a second, I'm going to turn that over to Mark because he is the guru at this point of today here in our in our little and in general of ways that we can find this kind of success and serendipity and teach the processes of getting that within some of the scary AI. And especially in a world where the algorithms are determining so much of what we get to see, um, using these tools to be able to sort of jump past some of that is such an amazing and such a crucial skill that I'm really glad everybody came. And I'm really glad that we can consider all of this from, again, the jumping off point of not just like, how do we fight AI, but like, how do we get some of these feelings through the new tools that are happening. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to turn that over for Mark in a second. At the end, we'll have some time for discussion if I don't keep babbling at you. And I'm really excited you're here. That's all.
All right. Thank you, Jessica. I love that enthusiasm. And it was great that you read those comments because people might be watching the video, may not have access to them. So, yeah, I love this one from Naomi. Going to Blockbuster to find Spike Lee films for my dissertation research. I just like any shout outs to Blockbuster. But also, it just shows you how much of this stuff is so how media dependent they are. And again, that's just something that's overly fascinating to me. And I think, for me, I fetishize the Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature that we used to have to go through divided up by year and subject. And oh my goodness, I don't know if I fetishize it, but it definitely is burned into my brain. Now, I don't think I am no guru, but the people I go to listen to on these matters are on this screen right here. Anna Mills, Annette V, Mahabali, John Ippolito, and Joy Bolam-Winnie. Each of them has their either a Substack or has uh, another outlet. Joy has the Algorithmic Justice League. Annette just started a Substack. Anna has one, a Substack. Maha has a blog. John has extensive resource pages. So up at University of Maine. So I'll have links I'll share to these folks later on. That again, they're the people I go to listen to. And actually, this whole exercise was inspired by Maha Bali's post about her thinking about her experiences of research and what it was like and how that influences the way she wants to teach research. But even though this is the tools workshop, want to I want to put it in maybe a critical light. I think a lot of these tools, if you see the breakdowns of AI, like what makes up AI, well, it is 50% machine learning, but it's also 50% something that I'm going to call bedazzlement, and also capitalizing on human laziness. So, and by bedazzlement, I mean the added sparkly interface that's designed, used to mystify prompters into thinking the AI tools are more useful than they are, or perhaps more human. So just keeping your eye on that because a lot of the tools I'm about to show you have an incredible wow factor, which is stupefying for our students and perhaps problematic or even may inhibit their research. And some people might be like, well, I don't use AI research tool. I don't want them. I guess those people aren't here, but I don't know. Maybe they do use them and they're just not thinking of things as being AI. I don't know. So some key terms you might want to know about. If you haven't heard of RAGs, you probably have, but RAGs are essentially LLMs that are tied to a data source. So remember, used to be we would say, oh, I know when it's ChatGPT because it's hallucinating sources. Well, you can tie an LLM to a database of sources and suddenly it's not hallucinating anymore in quite the same way, perhaps. It's linking what it says. You see this happening now in ChatGPT and Gemini, but also Perplexity. So just and also you can also consider it a kind of RAG if you take an LLM and you upload an article and you start querying about that article. Right now, it's an LLM that's tied to a specific data source that it can interact with. Also, chain of thought reasoning is really important. And that's when we'll see this in action, but that's when you put in the prompt and then the LLM basically asks itself a question about that prompt, and then it takes that and asks itself another question in a series that progresses over time, and it leads to some very sophisticated results that are, in some ways stronger than what we've seen. Um, again, continuing on some features generally that we find in these tools, we see discovery, of course, helping us find relevant articles. We see data analysis in some of these tools like Julius AI and others. We see summarization and explanation. Again, that's something you should tell students to explore with concern about whether it's actually doing that work for them accurately or not. We have some reasoning, or what we're going to call, I'm going to put this in air quotes, what we're going to call reasoning, or what those tools call reasoning. It's the same, similar to, or parallel to, but not the same as human reasoning, obviously. And then we have, querying in general, sort of, that's one of their functions. They sort of help translate a lot of these tools, just natural language blather into useful query terms, which is something that we used to do, right? We used to give that intro to research workshop that has Venn diagrams and it tells students to use the and the or, right? A lot of us have given that lesson for years, and now maybe we don't have to give it quite in the same way, I think. So here's this prompt that I've just generated. I mean, I made up myself. I don't mean I generated it anyway. I generated with my cabeza. Hey, my professor asked me to look up the social issue of women's rights and inequity and look for unexpected causes or problems for women in the US and look specifically at particular pieces of legislation. So this was like the lamest version of this prompt that I could come up with on the spot in front of my students the other day. So one of the places that I took it was consensus. Consensus is one of these RAGs. It's tied to scholarly databases. And in the professional version, it'll do some amount of summarization for you. In the free version, it'll do some and then it'll stop doing it after a while. So let me see if I can, hold on, I'm gonna stop sharing. And then let me share with you a screen where I have consensus running. Give me a second. La, 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 la. And this is the free version. So, and I tried to use free versions when possible, just because I don't have very much money. And I'm just an academic. Okay, so let me share that screen. Here we go. So here's consensus. You see I've put that natural language prompt, and it's given me a summary of the results of the articles it's found. And it's given me nicely broken down into different aspects that are nicely bolded for me. And of course, these little notes here will link me to articles, peer-reviewed scholarly articles that are tied to each of these things that it's brought up for me. And then if I look down in the results further, I see that I've got the articles and I have these little mini summaries that it's created. Let's go a little further and see what else it's got. It can also tell me about citations and things like that, or it can tell me if an article is highly cited or an observational study, right? Okay. So the next one, I took this question. So this consensus is one that I like. I tend to use quite a bit, even when I run out of this summary feature, which is like, you get maybe 5 of them a month, because I'm not that interested in this happening. But what I really want at the end of the day is help getting to articles that I need. Also, it encourages you to ask follow-up questions so that this is an iterative process. At least we preserve that for students, which I think is really, key to research. Elicit is a similar tool. And we can see where I've entered the same query here. I know I've talked to Zen, he uses Elicit. So you can see it's got similar like top level summary that it's given me, this kind of lit review-ish thing that it's generated. And it's got complete with citations. And then it gives me a breakdown of the articles. Now what's interesting about Elicit is that I can add columns. So let's say I want to add a main findings column. And I might have to make this window a little bigger to be able to see them. There we go. And unfortunately, this kind of shows you its limit a little bit, which is if the article isn't already divided up into those things, it really doesn't find them all that easily. Or let's say if the abstract, because keep in mind, so I want to just stop for a second and talk with you guys. Academic writing is designed for this very thing to happen in some ways, to almost be machine read. Like, okay, why do you write an abstract, right? What happens to an abstract? Even more importantly, when you write an article these days, if you're in the social sciences, they ask you to choose your keywords. So you are already like, and you're also, again, in the social sciences, you're writing an APA style paper, which is broken down almost to be machine read. Like it's got methods, it's got data, it's got analysis. And so, of course, machines can find where that is in the paper and they can extract that, or they can extract it from the abstract. So I don't think we need to see this as discontinuous from what we're doing already. Again, I don't find these columns and this breakdown to be all that useful to me because I don't do social science research. But of course, you can see, just to show you a few other features, it's got lots of sorting we can do, filtering, etc., of these search results. So again, a useful tool. Let me go to.
Can I just make a really quick pitch for why I sort of like the
Please, then go ahead.
format? Could you pull it up again? I don't know if you turned on screen share, but if you could just pull up Elicit. So if you scroll, what I like about it is that it feels a little bit more designed around highlighting the sources that go into things rather than say, here's the summary, here's like the information and you can take it away. So scroll back up to the actual summary part, right? To the very top. It's very clear how like each time Elicit makes a claim, it's like, this is an article you can read, right? And so I find that helpful for students. And then scroll back down now to where it says paper abstract summary. Again, they're all sort of linked there, and you can then, it's very clear, like the goal of this is go find that paper if you want to read more. Go back to consensus by contrast. And again, they're both, they're both good. They're both useful in their own way. If you scroll back up to the top, I feel like what consensus does is it's like, here are the answers. And then
Yeah.
very small, here's a source, right? So it's speaking of the like, just the kind of like interface of it. I guess that's why I prefer Elicit, because it's very clear to students. These are the articles you can go and research further because you're going to need to go into more depth rather than taking this as the sort of,
Yeah, and to be honest, since I run out of that summary thing relatively quickly,
yeah.
like I do my 5 queries and then it's gone, then most of what I see is this stuff down here, which again, I kind of feel similar to you with, um, I just want students to find articles faster. That is useful to me. That might be more relevant to them because that's great. Like it's hard enough already. Okay,
I want to jump in one other second to say
please.
that this is amazing in terms of tools. Also, though, if you happen to be a person who gives annotated bibliographies or literature reviews as part of your assignments, not every student is super AI literate right now, but like just understand that this is stuff that is going to be pretty commonplace in not that long. And so I think one of the things that AI is challenging us to do is to ask ourselves, what is the crux and the meat of what we're actually teaching them? What is our value there? And I personally believe that it's way past this kind of stuff. So just know that these kinds of abstracts, these kinds of summaries, and these kinds of relationships of articles to the subject are going to be pretty readily available as the years come up. So you might want to take that into consideration.
Right, right. It's no longer a hurdle level assignment. They can't,
Right.
it's not, there's no bar to them doing this automatically.
Right.
So, another one that really blows my mind so I have my students write a paper where they compare like traditional research methods to machine augmented research methods for some topic they're working on. And the one that they continually come back to is useful to them is Research Rabbit. Now, different than those freemium ones, Research Rabbit is kind of like it has the same ethos as Zotero. It's designed to be free forever. To some extent, I'll believe it when I see it, but I mean, that is something to keep in mind. So let me show you what Research Rabbit looks like. Let me think. Again, I know this sharing can get a little bit nauseating as I switch between screens, but hopefully we can do this relatively seamlessly. Uh, nope, that's the wrong one. Sorry. Meep. Give me a second. Research rabbits. Okay, one more second. Share. There we go. Okay, let's take a look at Research Rabbit. So Research Rabbit, Research Reimagined, and I've got to log in. So I have an account. Hold me a second. Okay, so Research Rabbit is more about discovery than I think anything, and discovery in the sense of like Netflix. So here's this article that I was working on about predictive policing software. So this article is about to come out in Digital Humanities Quarterly, and we look at a piece of predictive policing software and analyze the code in it. Anyway, so I took my Zotero bibliography and I imported 6 articles from that bibliography. Okay, so that's what's here. These are my articles, and I could add more articles if I wanted to. So I didn't use, by the way, in case you try to use this, I didn't use this import Zotero collection feature. I did this add collection, which gives you the option of adding the papers from Zotero, or I think it was the add papers button. For some reason, when I did this button, it didn't add any of the papers from that collection, which is weird. But anyway, let me show you what happens. So I want similar work, right? So now it's giving me similar works, and then it's giving me this visualization of the similar work. And then I say, well, can you give me work by these authors? And so it gives me the authors, and then it gives me these constellations of authors who are citing one another. And I could go on. Now, I find this, excuse my language, fucking amazing. And when I see it, it kind of blows me away. Now, if I were a student, I think that would have the similar effect on me. Would it actually lead me to articles? I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing is true, that I would certainly be bedazzled by it. Now, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Again, thinking about ourselves back in the stacks, trying to figure out, where do we start? Well, I mean, this is giving us a place for us to start, but there we go. There's another example of it. But at the end of the day, this feels like bedazzlement to me, which is concerning. I showed these tools to my students yesterday, and I saw their jaws drop, and I saw them look up from whatever homework they were trying to do in my class. Now, as a person who teaches required writing courses, I'm always trying to go for that moment. However, I'm not sure if they were learning something or if they were just being bedazzled. Okay, one more thing. Chain of thought. So USC people, you may or may not be aware of the fact that USC pays for a pro subscription for you for perplexity.ai. Perplexity is a research tool. It's a more or less a RAG. It's tied to the internet, obviously. I use it for a lot of these natural language queries, just about all sorts of information. It draws a lot from things like Wikipedia for the answers, but maybe I ask Wikipedia level questions. I don't know. Maybe I'm not a very interesting person. Hard to say. There's some more bedazzling, by the way. But this chain of thought reasoning, you can see happen in Perplexity. So let's go into Perplexity and see what that looks like. And maybe I'll just try for once, not to switch my share. I'll just drag this window over and resize it slightly. Hopefully that works without, it's more or less what you need. So there's my question, and it answered it. But I kind of want to show you what happens when you ask a question to this tool, because it's pretty bedazzling. Okay, so here we go. Here's our search screen. I'm putting in that question. Boop. Same question I asked all those other ones. And I'm going to say, oh, can you search this in deep research? Now, by the way, USC people, if you have to, I'm in a Chrome browser, logged in with my USC address. Already, I've gone through the SSO already. And then when I went to Perplexity, I logged in and used my Google login to get me into this. When I tried to log in for my other Chrome instance, where I'm logged in with my Gmail account, and I clicked the little SSO login button, which would have got me there, it didn't work for some reason. So just saying, that's the workaround. So here we go. I'm going to hit enter, right? Now watch what this thing does. I'm going to read it aloud in case people can't read it. Deep research often takes a few minutes to complete. I'll start. I always love when they use I'll. I'll start by, I missed it already. Dang it. I found a range of articles and studies discussing various pieces of legislation that have had unexpected consequences for women's rights and equity in the US. However, listen to that, however, wow, it must really be thinking. I still need to analyze specific examples and case studies to better understand, it's just killing time now, how these laws have impacted women's social issues. So I will continue my search for more detailed information. Okay. I mean, again, to me, this is the equivalent of vamping, but I found several sources discussing the complexity surrounding women's rights legislation, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the recent overturning of Roe v. Wade. Okay, good job, AI, which highlights both intended protections and unexpected negative consequences. I'm not sure that was unexpected to me, but anyway. However, I still need to gather more specific examples and analysis regarding legislation that has had unintended harmful effects on women's rights. Oh my goodness. So I will conduct a focused search on that topic. Great. So now it's doing that focus search, and you can see where it's drawing from, right? NIH, Amnesty, Unfoundation, Urban, Equality Now, HRW, right? So that's kind of, and it says it's reading. Do you see that little glowing word that says reading? Again, I'm pointing these out to you because it's part of a magic show that's happening in front of us that's meant to distract us and disable our critical thinking a bit. So And this will happen to students faster than it happens to us, I think, because they desperately need something to do this work for them. And when you cross a desperate need with a tool that seems to be too good to be true, students in a pinch will use it, I think. Anyway, so I'm not going to go through this whole process with you. It does more of this stuff, right? But I'll show you the results because I pre-baked this in the pre-bake oven. So here's all of the steps that it takes. And then here's its answer that it gives me in report form, similar to what we saw from consensus, but much more sophisticated, right? It's breaking down individual laws. It's giving me citations at every turn. These are all citations. It tells me where they come from. For every claim, there's a citation, right? This is the full report that is generated on just one search query. And just for a comparison, so this would be comparable to or parallel to ChatGPT's deep research. So this is deep research on Perplexity versus deep research on ChatGPT. And again, it encourages us to ask follow-up questions, or we could export this information, etc. Okay, so.
Mark, can you answer, like there's a couple of questions in the
Please.
chat.
Yeah.
Just letting you know.
What are the questions?
Well, first of all, Annika or Anika, sorry if I got that wrong, suggested another AI called answerthis.io. Also, some of the questions were, yes, Jessica, he did say Research Rabbit seemed to be a student favorite. I think we kind of got to why, the bedazzlement. But how much are these rags missing, for example, number of sources that we would otherwise be able to access using our expensive campus databases of research was one question.
So one answer to that is that that's a great question. And is it okay if I just say this for now? That question's not going to matter for long, because if you look at ProQuest, it's already, like, the reason why we're having this conversation is because ProQuest is already adding all of these features to it, and they'll soon add all of the features to it if they can. And there's no reason why they can't, because if they don't have them, they can pay, Perplexity or OpenAI or whomever to add those features to their database, and it's just going to be something that students are going to expect any database can do. But yes, my students, you're right, with consensus and elicit did run into articles that maybe USC paid for, but I'm not sure they were directly aware. We weren't tying our consensus or elicit accounts into USC's databases, so they weren't quite clear on which ones they had access to, which ones they weren't. Now, there may be ways to tie consensus and elicit to your library's databases, similar to the way you would tie Google Scholar to a database, or log into ProQuest through your library. Like, there might be ways just to tie those in, and I haven't looked into that just yet.
Another question there. Thank you. I think that's true, that it won't matter for very long, but for now, I guess it's
Yeah.
Question. Another question Patty had that I actually had too, because I paid for some of these. So how USC people get access to Perplexity? Patty said she tried the SSO login and it did not give her pro access. So
again, I'm gonna go through those steps once again, how it worked for me, which is I had to log into a Chrome instance with my USC account, a USC specific login to Chrome, and then I logged into. I went through SSO through that browser, and then when I logged into Perplexity, it said, "How do you want to log in?" I actually chose the Google login there, which got me in without any difficulty.
okay,
So that's like, again, that seems like a bug to me, but nobody else.
all right, gotcha.
And so I put a bunch of these here, but also if you go to that bit.ly, you'll find a link to like the entire script of this presentation and a whole bunch of other links that may be useful to you. So it's just bit.ly/AI research tools USC, and that'll take you to to, like I said, it's just a Google Doc that has, all of the links I've mentioned and more. But again, I was hoping that we could transition at this period of time into a combination of you guys just trying out various tools that you haven't tried out before, and then Jessica leading us in a discussion. So maybe what I'll do is, because people probably want to talk, I'll drop these chats. Drop these chats. I'll drop these links in the chat, turn things over to Jessica to lead some discussion.
Of course, I was muted. My students do that all the time. Welcome. Yeah, so I know that there were some questions in the chat. I wondered if there were any other questions that, just before we even get started into a discussion, I wondered if there were any other questions that are coming up right now as we're looking into some of these things. Questions, concerns, nuanced ways in which we might be able to use some of this stuff. Maybe, I mean, I was very excited to realize as we were doing this and as Mark was doing this that for those who might see this as bad, we've always used technology to find sources one way or another. And it's easy for many of us who are not, 22, not me, I'm obviously 22, but for others that this technology is worse than using, a card catalog or using a periodical that has, and in a way, it's not. I mean, I think one of the things we have to consider on a sort of ethical and access and DEI, even though I'm not allowed to say that anymore, level is, why is not having to do the more physical labor of looking for something inherently worse, right? Because I think a lot of us maybe believe that. So that's more of a philosophical question than it is a technical research tool one, but I think it's worth just throwing that out there as something to consider, and to recognize that even though these tools aren't exactly where we need them to be, maybe there's nothing inherently worse about using a tool like this than there is about using some of the other ones. But anyway, are there any thoughts or questions about this before we just jump into the general idea?
Do we have to type in the chat or can we actually speak
No,
aloud?
let's chat, girl. Let's talk.
I don't actually have a raise hand button in my Zoom. I don't know why, but mine's broken. In my React, it just says I can consider having reactions.
A concept of a reaction.
Yeah.
Perfect.
No, I just kind of like the last one, the perplexity one, to me seemed the most deeply problematic because it's just the exact thing we want to avoid in student papers, which is a big old info dump where they cut and paste a bunch of that information and plug it into their papers. And so I'm just sort of wondering, like, Mark, because you were showing them all these tools and like introducing them to all these tools, did you find that students were just like sort of dumping in some of these AI summaries, or did you have some additional like instruction on top of that where you were explaining like how to use those summaries effectively or how to use the sources from the summaries, which is probably more what we're looking for, is for people to go trace down those things and read them themselves?
Yeah, so this is the first semester that they've had access to the Perplexity one. I want to tell you another one I ran in front of them. This is the one that I actually was testing things out on, which was, I'll read this just for the sake of people. Tell me about the unseen or indirect causes of homelessness in Los Angeles. I don't want general causes. I want specific laws or policies, city, state, federal, that contribute to the crisis of the unhoused. The more obscure the law, the better. Explain your reasoning and give me the history. And that's a thing that's become common in prompts, like just asking it to explain its reasoning. And give me the history of the law, as well as any opportunities to overturn it and work around it to help those without homes. This is like similar to the paper assignment I've actually given them. That's part of the community course that I teach with Stephanie Bauer. And its answers were interesting. Again, some of them were expected, like single family zoning and exclusionary land use. This LAMC 4118, it's the blanket ban on sitting, lying, or sleeping on sidewalks, right? I don't know, just like it's interesting to see like what it came up with as it quote unquote thinks about these. And my hope would be that a student might engage in this conversation with perplexity and then say, great, I'm now going to look into that one and write my own paper where I analyze that and make my own arguments about that. So I guess what my, will this happen or not? We'll find out. But my hope is Curtis Fletcher from the library was just in here, and I was that's where I am right now. I'm leaving, and I was talking to him about. He said, "Yeah, I think about these tools as maybe giving me like a higher leaping off point into my own research." And so again, especially for a student, like I'm asking them like almost an impossible question, which is like, can you find unexpected causes or like less expected consequences of this social issue? And it's especially if I can get them to ask the perplexity at the level of like little laws that they may not have heard about. I don't know. I'm okay with them getting to that point with this tool. And then, like I said, then hopefully, like Zen was saying, going and reading the articles. I mean, will they read them? We'll find out. Matthew?
Thank you. I think,
Mm.
Mark, one thing you said that I think is so important to this conversation is not only the teaching students what good research is, right? How to conduct good research, is trying to steer them away from the idea that AI is an authority, right? AI is a complement. It should be able to complement how we research. And just like we wouldn't take at face value what somebody says, we shouldn't take at face value what AI says. And indeed, that's a part of what good research is. You find a source, you back up that source with another source, backed up with another source. And that's the challenge here with AI is when you get this onslaught of sources, you get 20 sources at once, now you're even faced with a much bigger challenge of backing up all of those 20 sources to verify the information you're receiving from AI. That's the big challenge, is to get students to not see this as an authority, but as a complement to the research that they're doing.
I'm with you, Matthew. I mean, that's kind of what I mean by bedazzlement. Like, I think you see, like, it is literally trying to trick you into perceiving it as thinking. It is like I study chatbots, and since Eliza, they've been tricking us, and we're happy to be tricked. Like we're perfectly. I mean, we're happy to be tricked by all sorts of people, politicians, used car salesmen, whatever. And especially when we're feeling that sense of desperation. And so, let's say I'm a first gen student, and I find the academy already alienating, right? And then I encounter this tool, and I'm like, good, problem solved, I mean, the difference is that a good reference librarian, when you ask them a question about how to find a resource, will engage you in a conversation that's for your benefit and your growth. And these tools are set up to seem like labor-saving devices. And so they're not going to create friction for you, or they're not going to, they have no investment in developing your thought process. So anyway, I guess I'm advocating for humans once again, but anyway, I agree with you 100%.
I think Pat had something to say, and then I wanted to jump in also. So Pat, sorry, were you trying to jump in there? Didn't want to cut you off. Okay. Well, when you do, let us know. I think, Amber, along the lines of your original question that sparked this, I think for me, one of the main things is, like, I'm always asking my students, what is the purpose of this document? Like, let's not get lost in all of the stuff. Like, what is our goal, right? And depending, I mean, we have people from a lot of different departments here, which is beautiful. For us in the writing program, our goal isn't, for example, to teach about homelessness. It is great if they learn about homelessness in this process, but our goal is to teach them critical thinking. It's to teach them, organized and deep and well articulated writing. It's to teach them rhetoric. So for me, I think what's important is if they're going to just info dump, that's on us for maybe giving the impression that what we want is for them to produce a really beautiful paper about homelessness that is about that shows that they learned about homelessness, which is never, for me, I straight up say, I don't care if it's a perfect product. I want what these essays that our undergrads are creating are not publishable pieces of writing for the most part, except maybe in like an undergrad journal that's talking about undergrad writing. So instead, I'm like, these aren't really public essays for publication. They are tests in a way that are showing me that you are engaging with the processes I'm teaching you and you're engaging with the skills I'm teaching you. So the information has to be sound, as Matthew so beautifully said. Your sources have to be backed up because that's one of the things that we're teaching them. But also, the critical thinking part is as important. So I think explaining that in some ways, them showing off that they've learned about the subject, but it was really an AI that learned about the subject, isn't even our point, right? It's showing, are you using the tools that we've given you to organize your writing correctly, to the hermeneutics to sort of understand your thought process and bring it further. So I love that as a complement to using AI, because I think ultimately, while we are teaching research methodologies, for us, that's not the goal. And I think all of us are going to consider in our own departments what our goal is in terms of student knowledge, and recognize that just rote information, unless maybe even we're like undergrad intro history or something like that, is not usually where we're going with this. Sorry, Min, did you add something that you wanted to say?
No, no, sorry. Actually, I just want to like echo for what you and Matthew just said. I mean, AI tool is just like any educational tool. It's just kind of like assist with student learning, but it shouldn't like replace student learning. And I mean, like when like we already do the research, we know like AI tool is like far behind from doing the good job of research. It's just provide very basic like a research level of that. So people need to like to keep people in the loop, to refine and review and like make it deeper and by like bring insight. So but like if you know how to use the tool right, it can be very effective, and it could be like game changers. For example, for consensus, for example, if like student find the paper in advance, like they check the validities and check the resources, and then they can import into consensus, and from that they can like find the links, the differences or like complement between the papers, and it could make them like save a lot of time for the doing the literature review. So I mean, like in the end, like we focus on the process of like what students learn on the way they do the research, they do the writing and learning, not focus on the final product. Yeah, so that's what I want to say. Yeah.
Yes. And Lear, you're right, Mark. Thank you for pointing that out. Your question was, would it be interesting to present students with cases of misused sources in pre-internet research while teaching these tools? So a journalist taking any info at face value, just to show them that any research is more complex than just someone said XYZ. I can't see how that's a bad thing, right? I mean, I think showing students, I mean, I think that's almost you guys can disagree or agree with me, but I think that's the foundational basis of teaching research in the first place, is to recognize that we can be, as Mark said, bedazzled by almost anything. We can be bedazzled by a source who's lying that we're not backing up enough. We can be bedazzled by misinformation. And in fact, being bedazzled by misinformation is probably, you know, some of the causes of some of the biggest injustices in the world. So I think that's actually a great sort of almost like, well, it's not exactly metaphorical, but metaphorical way to kind of do this. I don't know, anybody else can jump in, but.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so one bedazzling element that, like, again, I'm sort of enchanted by that research rabbit that's again not unlike Web of Science, if you've seen that before. You know, there are these visualizations out there, but you know, I do like that lesson of, you know, that citation builds these networks of conversation, right? It's like a little Kenneth Burke and a little, I don't know, just semantic web kind of thing. But anyway, but I love seeing that visualization. When I see it, I think, holy crap, if I were an undergraduate in a writing course that only asked me to use 6 sources in a paper, I don't know where I'd begin. And again, when I think about for my own research, where I've got large sets of articles I'm already reading, and if I could have the Netflix recommendation for the next thing I should read, that would be great. On the other hand, I'd much rather Lear hand me a paper and say, hey, you got to read this, or some extent, sometimes I'd rather trip over it. Well, one of the things that the serendipity question at the beginning of the session made me think about, though, was like how tricky that serendipity, how structured a library is to allow that serendipity to happen, and maybe how structured universities are to let that, the things we're perceiving as serendipity are often like the result of very carefully planned information resources that we happen to be able to find our way into, and then have this desire to explore. And the other thing that I took away from Maha Bali's post about this that you guys should all read is, okay, so I don't know about physically moving through a library, although I really do enjoy that. Although a lot of undergraduates are scared of the lower stacks of Doheny at our university because they're just terrified of them for a variety of, I know, personal safety, or just they watch too many horror movies, I'm not sure. And Ghostbusters was partially filmed in that library, but I'm getting off the point. The point is, but there is something about that she emphasized about slowing down the process of research, which I think is also worth, I don't know, like a lot of us have meta writings that we have students do about their portfolios at the end of the writing, but it's starting to make me feel like I'd like to start to see some meta reflection on their research process, and how that process of discovery went, and how ideas led them to other ideas and things like that. Oh, we got a big Jessica, who's co-hosting, wrote a big comment so maybe she'll just say those things so we get them for posterity in the recording.
No, I just didn't want to interrupt you because it kind of was based on what you were actually saying. And actually, Mark, what you were saying, I think is really important also. I mean, is important generally speaking.
You got to say it because it won't be in the recording. You got to say it. You got to say the thing.
Okay, I'll say the comment. What I was saying was that I wanted to encourage everyone to actually try this stuff in their own research or in their lesson planning, because when we have actual stakes in the queries and we're not just seeing how the tools work, but we actually are using it to try to get something out of it, we end up doing the searches in earnest. And at that point, we adequately are seeing the pitfalls and the benefits. And I just gave an example. I mean, I've used AI tools to help me find more updated articles for assignments that I've used for a long time. And have any of you encountered this? The materials start to feel a little bit out of date. They're less relatable to students. That is a very annoying prospect for me because I feel very confident in the lesson and exactly what it's getting across, but I don't necessarily want to sit down and spend 8 hours just updating those materials. Now, when they come to me in the course of my life reading, that's even better. That's, as Mark was saying, that's amazing when suddenly, or someone emails me something, or I just come across it. But the truth is that when I start realizing that I have articles in there from like 2008 or 10, and then I secondarily start realizing that 2008 or 10 wasn't 5 years ago, which really freaks me out. I start seeing that it's time, and AI has become really, really useful for me in those moments, especially last minute. I mean, honestly, they don't become, I don't trust AI and then suddenly, this is the example this is the comparison for students. I don't trust the AI, not read the article, not engage with it, and just upload it to Brightspace as something that students can use, which is exactly what you don't want students to do. But it does give me some understanding of the current, very, very up-to-date kind of contemporary canon of what's going on with these subjects, which is really useful, I think. And I encourage you to try it for yourself if you haven't. Although maybe you being
I realized that I had AI rewrite my Google Doc that you guys are all looking at, and when it did that, it kind of took out a bunch of the links. So
see?
which is kind of hilarious now that I see that it's happened. So I will share another version of that page with you that has the working links so that you'll have those, and it won't be just a bunch of missing links. Also, I wonder, can I get AI to update my cultural references so that I don't seem like I'm so out of touch? That would be good.
Wait, what happened? Sorry.
I want to use AI to update my cultural references, my pop culture references.
AI, so I'm obsessed with slang, like particularly Gen Alpha and Gen Z slang. It's just
Who is it?
most people, but are like any age that's not Gen Alpha or Gen Z, but it's kind of a side quest for me in my life. And I have to say AI is not great at it yet. Like AI cannot keep up. Like you have to really go deep and you got to go to Reddit or, you know, you have to go to more human crowds. It'll get there, like it'll get everywhere, but AI is cringe. It's like nobody should be glossing AI or glazing AI, that is. Do you guys know glazing? It's gross. Don't let your students say it. Anyway,
So, wait, can I do this?
yeah, mewing, or you can mute. Sorry, we could get off on a whole tangent about like
Do it.
young people playing, but no, let's not do it. I'm just saying AI is not caught up to these things. I'm like, if I'm gonna stay perpetually 22, as I said forever, I need to be ahead of AI. So we'll see. Rebecca, that was perfect. Thank you for throwing that in. I'm like, I don't know you really, but I love you. So yeah, I mean, we were planning to go an hour, is that right?
We were
And
planning to go an hour. Yes,
we are hitting the hour, so I would love to, before we wrap up, just to know if anybody has any pressing questions. And Rebecca was saying that this can be super obvious, but I do find it useful for assignment sheets and rubrics. Yeah, as a start, absolutely. I'm telling you, use it. It helps. It saves time. We don't get paid enough to not save time sometimes. I know this is being recorded and I should not say that under watch, but like it's true. Save the time, but teach students that it can be a time saver without being as you know, so many of us have said now, it's not the authority the student is, and it's not the authority we are. And I think that's the point of what we're trying to teach them. So thank you everybody for coming. I hope this was useful. There is our contact information is in that slide. Mark, it's available to everybody, yes?
Okay, so let me sorry, give me one more second to make sure that the document that everybody sees is the document that they need. Hold
I'll
on.
just put mine in the chat. I will say this, Mark is far more expert on this stuff than I am, but I'm happy to bullshit with you guys and talk about all of the potential benefits and ramifications of all this stuff, either online or, you know, over a coffee or a beer. So you let me know.
Okay, so I think now I have successfully done this. So now I've reverted the document to where it was before AI got its hands on it. And so now all those hyperlinks to various things should work. And I'll make sure it's as updated as possible. I believe that bit.ly should still work to get you to that document, but I've just gone back to the less well formatted, yet more, again, I feel like this is a cautionary tale right here. It's just a valuable lesson. It's less well formatted, but it has much more useful information to you. We'll put, Rebecca asked where this recording is going to be. You know, I can download it and upload it to YouTube when I get a chance, if that's helpful to everybody, because rather than just putting it in Zoom.
And we'll probably, Mark, you'll probably send it through the same channels that you sent the original invitation, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'll let people know where it is. And I must say, Jessica, thank you. You are an awesome co-host, and thank you for helping to run this session and
thank you for everything and for knowing this stuff way better than most people I know. So thank you. And thank you everybody seriously for coming, because we thought it's Friday. We were like, is there going to be 2 people here? We'll record it. It'll be fine. So yeah. We love you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all your time, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording.